will be done by Councilmember David Covington. We're going to have the Texas Pledge by Fire Chief John Fontenot, and the invocation by Councilmember Stephanie Lynn.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to these Texas,
one
state under God, one and indivisible.
Please pray with me. Father, we just come to you, Lord, praising your holy name. Father, we thank you for the beautiful rain today and the sunshine that we see now, and the sounds of laughter at the splash pad and the citizens enjoying a beautiful summer day. Father, I just thank you so much for this community that we've been allowed to live in. And I just pray your blessings on all the staff and team that work hard to make it the place that it is. Father, I just pray your immense blessing on those that are hurting, and pray for your healing, and for those experiencing loss, just comfort. Father, I pray for your guidance and wisdom this evening as we deliberate, and that it may be pleasing to you. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for leadership in those and the very thoughtful prayer. I'd like to go ahead and call tonight's city council meeting Tuesday, June 10th, 2025 at 5:31. And we're going to start off with public comments. Citizens or individuals who'd like to come before the council on any matter may do so at this time. The council will not respond, but we'll have city staff follow up, and you have thoughts. Paul.
Mayor Pro Tem Holmes and council members, it's a pleasure to speak with you today. Paul Romer, Director of Communications, 333 Water Street. I just wanted to give a report on the 2025 Tammy Awards. That's the state awards for communications. And that was last week that I attended this conference on behalf of the city. And we won 2 awards there. The first one was for an award of excellence for best media relations. That's essentially a second place award, and it had to do with our police department and the way that they interacted with the media last year. And some of the highlights were intentional high quality photographs, inviting the media to coverage like Coffee with the Cop or the Silver Santa. We had media ride along to some of those things. And then we created an online newsroom website as well. So second place for that. Then the big award was the Tammy Award for Best Unplanned Social Media Campaign, populated 100,000. And that was for our response to the storms. If you recall, all that went on after those storms last May, or May 2024. So just to highlight kind of what that effort was, our information from those storms started flowing within the first 24 hours. 10 social media posts that got people going on, this is where the city's at, this is what the damage looks like. Here's council in the emergency operations center discussing it. All of those things, that was kind of the beginning of our effort. And then if you recall, we had the brush pile taller than the tallest building in the world. One of the reasons that this was successful is because initially we estimated it would take about 2 months to clean up from all that drainage. And Sam and Matt's vision, they immediately expressed like, this is going to be taxing on our residents and our staff, and that we needed.
Keep going. Keep going. We got you. Please. Yes.
That we needed to build some goodwill so that in the event that the sentiment and the public changed, that we built up some goodwill and we could kind of ride through that. And we ended up finishing that effort in just 6 weeks, just in time to start preparing for the 4th of July, if you recall. The highlight of the campaign was recognizing the dedication of our public works and parks employees. really, we won that award because as frontline employees, they stepped forth and served the public in a critical time as need. So, grateful for those guys and the raw material, the telecom story, and our public works and parks certainly provided that.
Here. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Congratulations on the award. And that was a time when our city, definitely citizens and staff all came to work for a cause. The next, I have someone who I was just handed someone who'd like to make public comments, and unless this is specifically towards the water sewer budget, we'll go ahead and take those comments now.
I don't know, I have a public hearing, he needs to speak.
Okay. Is it Patrick? Brian,
Mayor, how are you?
if you wouldn't mind giving your name and address.
Yes,
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Brian Patrick. I live at 3201 River Place Drive here in Belton. I have done that for the last couple of years and office downtown. I wanted to address the council tonight around the issue of the budget and the potential a property tax increase. And in doing that, I want to thank all of you for your service. And I also want to thank the council members for the dedicated effort that's happened the last couple of years to reduce the tax rates over as property values have increased. You guys have reduced those tax rates. I see from the article from the work session that was recently held that there is a contemplation that tax rates may actually increase in this current budget year. I would like to urge you not to do that for a couple of reasons. First, the constituents of this community do not want a tax increase. You can see that from the recent state legislature where property tax reform and relief was a big issue. And thankfully, our state legislature has passed some property tax relief for us. I also think that in our taxes at this point actually might undermine the Imagine Belton effort that you guys have been so dedicated to. The reason I say that is we have a competitive advantage currently with the city tax rates from specifically Temple. But if we raise the taxes, then I think we undermine and create additional expense for people that want to invest in the development that the city's trying to encourage. So for both of those reasons, I would encourage the council to not entertain a tax increase. And because of the increase in values, if it's possible, and the additional revenue that's going to come from that, to continue your effort to decrease the property tax rates from the city and our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And we cannot respond to that, but we appreciate your comments tonight. And next one to the consent agenda. 5 through 4 under this section are considered to be routine by the city council and may be enacted by one motion. Discussion is desired by the council. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda prior to voting. Items on the consent agenda for tonight are consider minutes from previous meetings. In the May 27, 2025 city council meeting and May 30th and 31st, 2025, the strategic planning work treat. Number 4 is consider authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Casper Patrick and Associates for bidding and construction administrative services for 2 18-inch force main crossings of Nolan Creek. And those are items 4 on the consent agenda.
Move to approve items 3 and 4.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We have a planning and zoning item under number 5. Hold a public hearing and consider appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision regarding a zoning change from Plan Development 48 to Plan Development PD Retail on approximately 1.65 acres located at 121 Lake Road. And actually, the applicant has requested that this item be postponed to June 24th of 2025 at tonight's meeting. And so I would entertain a motion for that postponement with a specific date. And we'll just table that until or carry that agenda item over.
I'll make a motion to postpone item 5 to June 24th, 2025 meeting.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Good. We'll see him on June 20th. FYI 2020 budget. Working on 2026 budget considerations, including but not limited to the following fund: Water and Sewer Fund, Drainage Fund. Director of Finance, Mr. Mike Rogers, is going to take this over and walk us through this.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Holmes and Council. An installment of our preliminary kind of budget presentations, if you will, kind of where we are on things. Tonight, we'll specifically talk about the Water and Sewer Fund as well as the Drainage Fund. So let me show you some things going on here. So for Water and Sewer, let's start with first with where we may end fiscal 25. So we started fiscal 25 with $5.4 million of unrestricted net assets in the Water and Sewer Fund. For 2025, our budget was $14,392,000 of revenue, and we may come into that, about 162 higher than that, 1% over that is what it looks like today. On the expenditure side, our budget was $14,555,000, and we're probably going to come in closer to $13,300,000. And the primary reason for that is we've had about, I think the number is like $800,000 of savings, if you will, from debt service. You'll recall that we issued our 2025 certificates just recently in April. We had planned to issue those way back in 2024 before we were preparing this budget. But because of delays in design and everything else, that debt issuance did not occur in fiscal 25 like we thought. Instead, you'll see the first debt payments in 2026 of that. So we have some significant savings in 2025. This 1.2 million is where we might see an increase in reserves compared to where we expected to use $132,000 of reserves. Ending net assets end at 46.2% of budgeted expenditures for 2025. That's our current estimate. So, but what I want to show you is kind of the though in those figures that I just told you. Every single year with water and sewer, especially because of seasonality, revenue forecasting is difficult. A very wet spring and summer can cause a dramatic effect in revenues. And we're kind of having one of those. Some other things that are happening this year, particularly, is the implementation of winter averaging and our tiered rate structure in this year. It's the first year. And we're not through the summer, so I can't necessarily give you just a super great feel of consumer behavior after implementing those things. So let me show you what I do here. This is kind of some inside baseball. I think it's important for you to see. This is my spreadsheet for forecasting revenues. And I do this same type of spreadsheet for all of our revenues, essentially, and then you go in the general fund and the rest. So what you have here is this column here is what we've received to date. And so far we've received in blue, you see that $3,716,000 in May of 2025. So what we then do is this column, I want to point you out, that column here is the monthly contribution, the amount that particular month contributes to the whole on average. For example, October normally is 5.1% of the total. November is usually 8.7%, et cetera, 6.6. So this time through May, we typically have received 52.6% of our revenues through the month of May. On a calendar basis, we're 66% of the year complete, but on a revenue basis, we're only 52.6%. And that's based upon all of these years of history that you see out to the right. So for forecasting, and just so you can see, so you see these higher percentages there, 8.1, 9.8, all the way to 16%. You can see that is seasonality. That is showing you that we get a lot of revenue here, almost 30% of our revenue in the last 2 months of the fiscal year. That's because of all the usage during the summer months. So
just understand, right? So in August, we're expecting 4.4 million in revenue.
no, don't look at this side. Don't look at that column. what we do for the math is we take, if you take that 3.7 million in blue, you divide it by 52.6. Whoops, sorry, wrong button. Then you end up with an estimate right there of $7 million. That's a year-end estimate where I think you're going to land for water. So you can compare that then to a $7,060,000 estimate to a $6.8 million budget. You can see that our current estimate shows a surplus revenue in 2025 for water of $257,000 over where we budgeted. What you can see, if you just again, this is inside baseball, but you see how these numbers here start to settle down. It started at 7, got all the way up to 7.8 million in that estimate, and then it started settling down around that 7 million mark, and it has done that now for 2 or 3, 4 months in a row. That starts to give you a little bit of comfort that we're following our normal trend. So I'm telling you right now, this is my schedule today, and what you're seeing in this budget that we're talking about is $7,060,000 of estimated water revenue for fiscal 25. So here's the one that gives me some concern, however. So sewer revenue is a little more challenging. So, and this is why. Remember, we implemented winter averaging, which places a cap, which is on the sewer charges for residential customers. And so if we do the math that I just showed you, I would take this $3.2 million, divide that by 56.7, because that's on average where we've been. Then I end up with this estimate right there of $5.7 million. So that looks pretty good, actually. If we follow our normal trends and we have this sort of peaking in the summer months, we should land within $200,000 or so of our budget. And that looks great. If, however, again, I don't know consumer behavior and how this is going to work, if instead of that, if we say that we take these numbers here, and because these are sort of caps now on sewer revenue, if you just do the math there of 3,285,000 divided by 8 times 12, just assuming that these numbers are just going to continue down that path, then your new estimate is 4.9 million. Compare that to the $6 million budget that you see here. Significant difference there. Do you see how we did that? I'm not throwing out any red flags, not trying to scare anybody. I think we're going to land somewhere in between that 4.9 and that 5.8 is where we're going to probably land. I'm not real confident that we're going to see this kind of peaking in the next few months. So I think we're going to be somewhere in the middle here, if that makes any sense.
On the general, do you have data that shows, are people under their caps currently? Or is everybody meeting their cap?
Now that we are in irrigation season, most people would be way over there, would be irrigating now. So they would be over that, the usage that they would have done in the winter. What happens though is, I'm just making up some numbers here, but if a typical resident, say, uses 3,000 gallons a month in the winter for basic home usage, that's not too far a cry, 3,000 to 4,000. Just say they use 4,000 gallons a month for 3 months. Then the winter average is 4,000 gallons, right? That's the most that I'm going to charge them sewer for, the cap for the remaining 12 months of the year. So even if they turn that sprinkler on in July last and they use 25,000 gallons of water, I'm only going to bill them for 4,000 gallons of sewer. That's the way the winter average works.
Correct.
We used to have a flat 15,000 gallon cap on sewer. That was a completely made up number. No clue how we came to that. But so I was billing in that same situation I just told you. If I would be billing that customer up to 15,000 gallons of sewer even though they didn't use it for sewer, because because of the water consumption that's going on at the 25,000 gallon number now. So I'm losing, what you're losing under the winter average, that lower cap from the 15,000 gallon to really, in my example, it would have been 4,000 gallons.
Well, what my question was is that that data, October through May, on the whole, people are hitting 80% cap, or there are those numbers they've been hitting their cap. Do we know that?
That I could not tell you. That's granular at a level I couldn't tell you.
Because if they hadn't been hitting their cap, then you would see some sort of
Yeah,
ramp up. But if they've already at their cap, then there's obviously going to be no ramping.
correct. The winter averaging only applies to residential customers. So you still have apartment complexes and commercial customers that don't have winter averaging. So that may lead to some of this peak here. Whoops, I'm going nuts here. Hold on.
I'm good. I don't want to sidetrack too much.
That could lead to some of that peaking. On the residential side, I would say that probably most folks have already surpassed their winter average, most likely because the irrigation season has started. I can't tell you what percentage of that is here in these numbers. Under the normal circumstance, again, we'd be perfectly fine if we came in within $200,000 budget. And that might happen. I'm not trying to scare anybody. What I'm showing you is I don't know what the real number is going to be. That's what I'm showing you tonight.
But the other issue that, Mike, is if we've gotten close on our employee cost, fixed cost, and the city's actually on both sides of this. And we're selling water for revenue, and we're buying water as an expense. And if it's down, we need to make an adjustment, or we'll have less expense and less revenue. And I would think that would be along the same lines in terms of sewer.
Yep, that's correct.
And so maybe been a wet summer or spring. We haven't sold quite as much water as we thought, but we also haven't used quite.
That's right. There's a cost that goes along with it.
I think that,
Absolutely.
close, the number at the end may be on the city, not revenue may be easier to see initially, but expense I think would catch up and correct itself towards the end.
That's correct. No, that's correct. And that's where I'm going in this discussion we're about to have. I want to show you something. I wanted to show you this so you can get a feel for when I tell you that it's a little uncertain. It's just this consumer behavior is what I'm wondering about as into the next budget cycle. So if we look at then 26 budget, just like we mentioned in the general fund side, I'm bringing you a very lean on both revenue and expenditures for 2026 compared to 25. And our budget for 2025 on the revenue side is 4.3 million. The kind of what we're looking at now is a $500,000 increase, 3.5% increase over that to get to 14,907,000 in 26. That revenue is based upon no changes to our water rates. Again, I'll show you that here in a few slides. And sewer rates would follow our study, increasing slightly. On the expenditure side, expenditures actually would go down by $151,000 to 14,404,000. No new positions again, and lower capital spending than in past years. So if that comes to be, and all of these estimates that I have just happens to work out exactly the way it is, we might end this year at $6.7 million in reserves, or 46% of budget. Next year would be revenues 14.9, expenditures 14.4, $500,000 increase in assets. So we could end next year with just over 50% reserves at $7.2 million. What that looks like is, I'll show you these two charts here. So this one particular chart here is the operating fund. That's the one that we've been talking about. The red bars that you see there is the actual unrestricted fund balance. You can see this big jump here from 5 million here to 6.5 million, the $1.2 million that we just talked about, where we have net income of 1.2 million in 25. The kind of orange bars, the lower ones, is our minimum fund balance. Our minimum fund balance level per policy is 30% of our expenditure budget. And so you can see our right around 4.5 million would be our floor. And this would be the revenue that's above that floor. That's just based upon what I'm showing you now. We also have in the utility fund, these other funds. We have two bond funds, the 2022 CO and the 2025. This is the new bond issuance that we just did. You can see we got $15 million there for those projects. This capital project fund for the utility fund has a little over $10 million in it. There's $5 million of that 10 is money that we've set aside for the wastewater treatment plant expansion. That's about to soon start. And then we have these an equipment replacement fund and a metering replacement fund. So what do revenues look like in 2026? Again, our 2025 budget was 14,392,000. 14.5 million is about where we are estimating now. We would increase to 14.9. Water revenue goes up about $200,000, $250,000 over the 2025 estimate. Sewer, even with no change to the sewer revenue would go up about 200,000 for 2026.
If
So
you're projecting a shortfall, why are we increasing our proposed sewer revenue?
we'll get to that.
Okay.
Well, about the debt, Mike, if we've issued debt for a project, have interest expense on that coming up, but are also holding the cash because the project hadn't started yet.
Correct.
Do we pass the development cost, expansion cost to the user that's been delayed when we're still holding the money?
We issued, so that project, I believe the bid opening is supposed to happen in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, end of June, next week. Then we'll know where then it has to be reviewed and then it'll probably come back, I think, in July to council.
Yes,
July award for council. There you go. And for us to legally secure a contract, we had to have enough money in the bank to do that.
I understand.
And that's why we issued that. So the fear might be that those bids may come in even more than we expected. I don't know that yet. I mean, hopefully they don't. But the way it works with interest earnings on bonds is that if we don't spend these bonds quick enough within the time frame allowed by the Internal Revenue Service, we get into an arbitrage position, is what they call it, to where we have to refund that excess interest earnings back to the IRS. That's just what we.
Maybe I was confused. I didn't know that. Are we certain that the project will start in 2026?
I hope so.
Yeah, I thought it was delayed.
Yes, it had, the design went on and on and on and on. I think now we're to the point to where they're gonna get cranking shortly. I can imagine they would delay after that. Any comments on that?
It'll happen in 2025.
There you go.
Start.
Yeah.
And-
September.
And that's the biggest chunk of that debt. The other projects we're kind of already starting to roll along on, getting that underway. So yes,
So
We're
what
gonna-
would the total amount of months we're paying interest before something's actually.
yeah, it won't be that many. We pay interest every 6 months. So we won't make an interest payment until February of 2026. Hopefully we'll be turning dirt. So I want to kind of walk you through some of this information. So what I showed you before is a surplus in 2025 that we did not expect when we prepared the budget for fiscal 25. That was based upon the debt service that we had in the budget we're not going to have to make in 2025. Because of that surplus, I'm kind of where I'm leaning for a recommendation to council is leaving the water rates unchanged for 2026. A time. And this is what I'll tell you that in a second. So here's what would happen. These are the rates for 2025. This is the base rate for water. So Base rates are done by meter size for water. And this is the 25 rate was what the rate study said that we should adopt for the first year of implementation. That rate study said then that 2026, we should go up on our 5/8 meters, and that's most of our customers, and residential, so that's vast majority of our customers. The study in our rate structure that we subsequently adopted shows a $1 increase to the base rate to $19. What I'm leaning towards right now is leaving that at $18 for the rate that we adopt in September going forward for 2026. Now, on the volumetric side, same here. We have volumetric rates by tiers of usage now. There's 4 tiers, 2,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10, 25 and above. And you can see the rates here. Those are our current rates for 2025. Our rate structures, they should go up to that. $394 for the first tier, $420, $525. Again, I'm ending that we leave those flat for 2026. On our multifamily and commercial class, same here, $4 is what it is now. The study says it should go up to $420, but I'm saying we should leave it $4. And the non-residential sprinkler class, again, 4 tiers here, much higher tiers. This is, but 2025 rates, 2026 rates, without the additions that the rate study says. On the sewer side, the sewer has 25 rates of $17.95. The study says we should increase that base fee to $18.26 and the electric rate to $18.14. And because sewer, I mentioned to you before that there's some volatility there. We also know that the sewer fund is subsidized by the side. So I think it's prudent to go ahead and increase that according to the study. Now, to give you a perspective of that, if a customer has a 5,000 gallon winter average, and 5,000, that's probably a typical, if not a little bit high, average consumption in the wintertime. The total increase in their bill from these rates would be 52 cents a month. So your base fee goes up 31 cents, and that's a flat 31 cents. That volumetric rate is 7 cents per 1,000 gallons. So 7 cents times 3 is 21 cent volumetric increase. So you add those two together, the maximum bill would go up 52 cents if my math was done. If we increased it to that.
Do we know what our winter averaging for usage amount for residential is today?
Everybody is independent. That's the nice thing about the way we did it now. Instead, before I mentioned we had a flat 15,000 gallon cap and that applied to everybody, and I don't know where the number came from. Now, every single customer determines their own winter average based upon the net that they use.
Your guess is $5,000
Yeah, that's just kind of a number.
5,000 is the normal usage.
Yeah.
Do we have that number?
I can get that number.
I think that'd be.
Sure, that's a good idea. Now, we're not adopting rates tonight. We're just going to have some more discussions as we go on about adopting rates and all. I wanted to give you kind of a feel because this is what's built into the budget that you're looking at. But you see that big caution sign, if that's what that's supposed to be on all of these rate slides. Here's my thought. We need to get through November. We need to get through an entire summer with this new structure and see how we land, see how things are going, what the consumer behavior is in the summertime with higher rates if they use the sprinkler, always use the sprinkler. So let's get through the November, just, October, November, December, get through all that. And then let's then see where we land at the end of the fiscal year. Are we really going to have a large surplus or not? Like I'm telling you tonight. If we do, then this is probably fine. Let's just go ahead. And we'll adopt it in September and just leave it. If we get to that time frame and we see how actually come out and we're significantly lower or something happens, is that $1 million showing you? Then maybe we increase the rates in January or February of 26. As a, maybe, and I'm not just saying that's my thought, is let's delay a final rate increase decision, not necessarily sewer. Again, sewer, I'd recommend we go ahead and do, but on the water side, let's wait and see how things play out for the rest of this summer. And then if we need to change it early 2026, then we can do it at that time. That's just my idea kind of going forward. Yes, sir.
How many sewer customers do we have?
It's like, it's less than water, but I think it's like probably 6,000. I'm gonna go 2-ish. And we have like almost 9 water.
I like your idea, except unpopular opinion, potentially. Maybe I'd like to flip it the other way. You want to hold off because we don't have enough data. You want to see how it goes. I don't know that I'd feel right increasing the rate just because we don't know. I'd rather just let it ride and then relook at it after we get full data. I mean, if you're talking about 6,000 customers at 57 cents, potential, if it was spread out, and you're talking 40 to 50,000,
Yep.
We obviously have that in the fund balance.
Correct.
That's just
We could certainly do
that's
that.
my 2 cents.
And Mike, when a new water customer comes online and they don't have a history of winter averaging, what do we kind of default their cap
Our
at?
ordinance says 6,000 gallons is our default winter average. So yes, I could certainly do that. That's why we're here talking about this.
So I mean, if the argument is we don't have enough data, I'd hate to we don't have enough data, I think it's going to be bad, and then we do that, and then it's like come November, it's the exact opposite. Just right about that.
Yeah. Well, this was the plan. I mean,
Yeah, correct.
that study, the study that you see here, showed annual increases of 7 cents or so like this every year, for the next 4 years, just in that rate study. So it wasn't like this is a time thing. What we would end up doing is essentially pushing back the study 1 year, the study numbers, study rates, and just implement those later. But still planning to increase as we, kind of annually. We remember when we had those discussions, I think the kind of consensus was it's better to increase incrementally than not doing something and then having a bigger jump. And that's some of the reasons why this was structured the way it was, to have those annual step kind of things. But if you prefer, if the consensus is you'd like me to bring back, a budget that doesn't have a sewer rate increase as a default, I'm perfectly fine doing that.
And your proposed budget that you've presented at the beginning of this, is that based on no increase on water rates and yes, increase on sewer rates?
Correct.
Okay.
Mike, would you mind going back to the slide that had the residential meter or pipe size? The one thing that when we were setting up this, one thing we heard over a couple of times was that all residential is 5/8 or 3/4. And we just had a lady stand up and tell us that she has a 1-inch line that surprised her, and she's $33.27 plus some other issues associated with it. And I don't know if that was for sprinkler or water, both, but maybe some older neighborhoods have a 1-inch line and have a separate meter for irrigation. They've really taken it on the chin over the last year or so with rate increases. Is that a big source of revenue, residential 1-inch? And I know you don't, I'm sorry, I should have given you a heads up.
We likely have very few of those. Most of in fact, it's all 5/8. on the domestic side.
Well, that's what we heard last time
Yeah.
when we were setting this up, that all residential is 3/4 of.
Well,
5/8.
all
And that's not true.
residential domestic likely be 5/8. A sprinkler meter, somebody could install a bigger meter than a 5/8 on a sprinkler meter. And that might be the case here. I didn't look at the meter sizes. But I think I don't have a count for you for the number of 1-inch residential customers, but that are residentials. But there's likely, that's more rare than it is common.
And the thought behind that was, hey, we're gonna charge for flow.
Demand,
Mm.
on demand.
Correct. The
Not
1-inch meter.
Possibility of usage.
Correct,
What they
exactly.
have access to, not what they're using. We're gonna
That's
put a
100%
fee
right.
on what
That's
they
100%.
have access to.
Yeah, that's
Because
100%.
we've got to be able to support that.
Yeah, so
So
it's,
it might be kind of, I would like to know how many residential 1-inch
we can get that.
pipes there are, because they've taken a hit. We corrected one piece of that, and so, just, I'm afraid there's some older homes out there that they either put in it's been there a long time, but we didn't really consider that, and it might.
Yeah,
be residential.
This structure there is American Water Works Association kind of factors of peaking and things where it's a multiplier of that first number is 18, and then as the meter size goes up, there's a factor that's multiplied by.
And I totally understand it.
and that's based upon that.
It's the people who might have been in a pinch because we just said, hey, you have the potential to use X number of gallons a month.
Yeah.
And we're gonna set your base rate at 33.27.
Yeah.
Which is, almost double of what you were doing. And if that's for 2 meters, they're really getting.
Yeah, there's no base fee on the sprinkler meter,
Okay.
just only on the residential. Is that correct, Amanda? That's correct, right? Yes.
I'd really like.
So the person that stood up and said she's getting charged for a 1-inch line. And you said that that's all sprinkler meters.
Maybe.
She's getting charged for her domestic
We're gonna find out.
water on a 1-inch line.
We're gonna find out.
Mr. Sims.
I didn't.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll find out.
We all heard it.
We'll
Could,
find out.
could we see when you go look for the numbers of 1-inch lines, could we actually, for the top 4 categories there, just see the number of customers we have?
Do you want
Hmm.
total all customers or just residential customers?
Residential.
Okay. So we'll do residential customers I can give you residential customers for all sizes.
There you go. That'd be great.
I think we had that last time.
We did it in October, so we have that.
We did a total.
And on the 5/8, the vast majority of residential,
So,
5/8. Not necessarily all of them. There are some that have 1-inch, 1.5 meters. Some have the 3/4, the old style meters. But obviously the larger the meter size as well, the more it costs for us to replace that one day.
Right.
So that's why we kind of use the 12 extreme example, but that's a $30,000 meter. We have to replace that one day. And so kind of just building that into an effect as well. 1-inch meter is probably not a huge difference in price from a regular 5/8, but the vast majority are. But we have that meter data from the last time we talked about it in October. So we'll collate that and get the 1-inch number.
And just so you know as well, the base fees are monthly flat, monthly fixed fees. So the difference, that's not times any volume. So that $33 1-inch meter is $10.20 a month more than a 5/8 inch meter, but it's a flat because of the amount of volume that goes through that. There's no change to that. We don't charge more because it's flowing through that particular meter. Anything on that? That's a good.
So if I have a 5/8 inch meter and I use 10,000 gallons, and my neighbor has a 1-inch meter and also uses 10,000 gallons, they're only paying $15 more than me.
Correct.
Okay.
For the same amount of water, right?
mhm.
Correct. The volume would be this, we'd charge the same volumetric rate for that. The difference is that
Meter size.
$15.
On the next slide, where you had the breakdown of the pricing. How many above 25,000 Do we have?
We can find that out. That depends on time of year. Right now, we have a lot. I mean, I'm gonna say a lot. We have, folks that are in that top tier because they're irrigating a lot.
It's like the UMHBs.
That and the UMHB would fall into a much larger tier.
And we did an awful lot of work to clean up the categories. We had
Yeah.
some HOAs, churches, and
Yeah.
really not
that's been done.
residential
Yeah.
in that group before. And so we really tightened that up, cleaned it up, and tried to get a better picture of true residential.
There were a few hundred residential
Oh, yeah.
people that were over 25,000.
No, we have some very, very, very large consumers in the residential category.
Yeah.
But that's why we have a structured,
Yeah.
tiered structure. We do.
Yeah.
Certainly that's their prerogative if they want to use that much water. Okay, so I will adjust revenues for,
Sewer.
without a sewer rate increase that we have here.
I'd say Luke could be helpful for you to go through all the water study we did last year.
I was just
That
thinking
entire package.
all those numbers.
Be
are
good
in-
stuff.
Cool. Appreciate it.
It'll help explain a lot of this.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
She could-
we can get there.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Drainage fund?
Nope, not there yet.
Okay.
This is exciting, isn't it? Okay, so I'm gonna go fast. Okay. On the expenditure side, we talked revenues to death. On the expenditure side, yeah, we budgeted 14.55 in 14,500,000 in 2025. The rest looks like it might come in at 13.2. That is purely because of that right there. That's the savings that I was telling you about on the debt service side. Next year, we would be at, the budget for expenditures is sitting at a 14,400,000, a slight decrease for 25. So go through just a few of these divisions. Utility admin goes up $90,000 in 2026 compared to 2025. Most of that falls into this services category, and that's information technology transfer that we before at length in general fund. Utility finance budget goes up 152,000. Again, that's debt service that's driving that. 2.994 compared to 2.8 is what's really hitting that one. Personnel costs a little bit because we, in 2024, we reclassified a senior accountant position into a utility billing specialist position. On the water side, this budget actually goes down 367,000 with savings in capital outlay or changes in capital outlay, and also these transfers. Fewer capital projects mean fewer transfers to capital project fund. And that's what that decrease is there.
Question.
Yes, sir.
I noticed the personnel's the budgets are always high and the estimates are always low. What's the story there? Just we don't have every position filled, or?
That is a common thing. We have vacancies during the year. We have, it's all that, there's insurance that's involved there. We have some save insurance a lot of times if it comes in better than we expected. We will adopt this budget before we have final insurance numbers. So that's where you see a lot of the savings as well. That and vacancies and things like that. That's what generally happens.
The budgeted number is full-time employee, all full-time positions filled, everybody taking full advantage of every benefit we offer. And
It's based upon, we budget what they have selected in the past. So if some has family coverage this year, we're going to assume that person's going to have family coverage next year. It's the new positions that come on. What is the number that what are they going to get? The new people that we don't have a clue. Sometimes we'll budget just the most, so we have it covered. I think next in this budget, we're budgeting the employee only coverage in that. So that's where those savings come in. Good questions. On the sewer side, sewers is fairly flat here with some ups and downs, various things. There's some savings here in sewer treatment. It actually looks like, according to the BRA's second budget draft, that their costs might actually go down in 2026 a little bit, and that's good to see. Finally, we have the debt obligations of the water and sewer fund. There's your new big one. That 14,985,000 that we just issued. Debt payments look like this for the next 2 years. They stay fairly level at a little over $1,000, 2028, dropping a bit after that 2028 stuff with the maturities, hangs out at that level for a while and then drops and drops as you get out in these out years. Principal and interest components are broken down there for you to see. Now we'll move on to drainage.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
first an anecdote and then my question. I've got a mortgage on my house, so we've got an escrow account. Money goes in for taxes and insurance every month. The mortgage company pays the taxes and insurance. And then at the end of the year, I get a statement that says, hey, we were short. You need to send us some more money. And so I send them some money. And then the next year they go, oh my gosh, we have too much money. Here's your money back. And then the next year it's, oh, we need more money. And so there's this kind of a effect that happens. And I feel like a little bit that's what's happened here, especially with our water fund. And there was some of that with the general fund last time. It would be nice if we could identify some one-time expenses, because we've all talked about how we don't really want to be a 50% fund balance reserve.
We're not going to.
Which is what's budgeted. And so I know that we can't say, well, let's slash the budget by $1 million, because then next year you're going to say, hey guys, no money.
That's right.
Send us more money.
Yep.
And so I don't want to create an unnecessary accordion effect like I have with my bank. But if there were some things that we could say, look, we over collected last year. Here's some projects or some paying off some debt, or whatever it is that we could do as one-time expenses. That way
It's a CIP against the reserves.
Right.
Why is this bigger than 30%? And here's why.
Yes. So the path that you're headed down towards capital type items, one-time type expenditures, set aside the money for something on a one basis is a fabulous use and a proper use, a prudent use of that surplus if you chose to do so. We could look at some of that in our CIP. We're going to have a CIP coming up at the next council meeting. There's what we could do with that. The question becomes, what's the balance of the number? Are you going to want to use everything above 30? And we've been, over the last 3 years, at least, we've been trying to draw that down. It's trying, sometimes it's fate, but we've been attempting to draw down that fund balance to get it closer to that 30 number that we all talk about.
We've agreed that that is enough. That's our planning.
That's the floor, but that's enough, right?
And that's an arbitrary floor that we've established.
That's correct. So that's the tension, as the mayor would say, of what percent do you want to be at? Remember, it wasn't that long ago when we were at 30. So this fund's been a little bit higher, but this fund also has a whole lot of big capital expenditures, and the seasonality effect of wet summers and all that can make revenues come in substantially different than you expected. So, but that being said, we can identify a capital project type of something for that. And we've done that in the past, set it aside for that kind of thing. That's much better than just saying, let's just use reserves. And then next year, because you're right, I'm going to come back and say, well, we got to get back to where we were, because this is artificial where we were, what we did. But let us look at it and we'll see if there's something there. Some of the, and it's this fund, it's the others. Some of this, I said, for the last 3 years or so, we've been trying to draw down these reserves. And every time we've tried to do that, we've had this weird stuff happen. We had COVID in 2021 that all of a sudden, everybody in 2022. And now we've had this debt issuance that we thought was going to happen, and it's not. It's all that kind of weird stuff that's been causing us not to achieve our goal of drawing down the reserves. But a one-time capital item, we could certainly look at for something like that.
Thank you.
And maybe with a minor budget shortfall in a specific account, maybe step back, take a deep breath and say, wait a minute, we've got excess in the fund balance. Maybe we just absorb that for the year and don't make any major adjustments to our fees or our rate schedule. The other thing, just real quick on the sewer expenditure, I didn't see a interest charge or a debt service. Am I missing something there?
I have all of that in the utility finance budget. That's
Oh,
kind of what that division is for. And it's mainly paying that debt service there. We haven't that allocated in our rate structure between water and sewer. But that's where I put it. Anything else? These are great questions, guys. Thank you. Okay, moving on to drainage. Drainage, we expect to end pretty close to where we budgeted in drainage for 25. Instead of using 1,000 of reserves, we probably might increase that slightly. There's been some expenditure savings at the end of the year. We might end up at 43%, but that's 43% of a very small number. So, I mean, just keep that in mind. The budget for next year, I have revenues increasing 5%, even though there's no rate change in our drainage fee. Expenditures, no new positions and lower transfers that we mentioned before. So where that might go, if it all work plans, as we could end up kind of there with a $56,000 increase to reserves. Again, this is a small fund, and we have probably more needs identified than we're truly have the ability to pay for. But that's kind of where that is. These same charts here, you can see these bars are our actual fund balance, and this is the reserve requirement. Because expenditures have remained fairly constant, our reserve requirement has not increased much. But the actual fund balance has. This capital project fund that is in the drainage fund, that's all but 68,000 of that is allocated towards projects right now. Most of that is the East 4th and Blair drainage project that's coming up soon. That's what's sitting there. On the revenue side, the increase here to 670 from 636 is a 5% increase in revenue. That's what our 4-year average growth rate for drainage fee revenue has been for the last 4 years. And that's without changing the rate. So that's what I have in here for 26. On the expenditure side, actually expenditures go down by 38,000. We do plan on spending about 28,000 to upgrade our flood monitoring system in 2026. That's much needed. And this transfer to equipment replacement fund actually goes down in 26 to save some of that.
Mike, can you remind me what that debt service portion is?
It's for that right there.
Yeah,
So we issued debt in 2008. And that actually goes in several places, but I think there was $335,000 was the principal in 2008 that was issued for. That's had several projects that we've done. I have those here.
Drainage fund started in 2017. Why I'm curious.
There's several projects that we did with that $300,000. Some of these you may remember. Avenue D, Hilltop was a big one. Drainage on Hilltop. Central Avenue drainage is one of those projects that we did. Avenue D, Avenue E, and Mitchell for some of those drainage projects done with that debt service. But we're about to pay that off. We still got a couple of years left. Payments are only 25 grand a year, but I'll be glad when that's done.
But did the debt service or did the drainage fund not start around 2017, 15, 16, somewhere in there? We hadn't had that long. I was just curious how a 2008 debt.
It had to have been around in 2008 or I couldn't have issued debt for it, I think.
Goes back a little bit farther than that, than 17.
Maybe it was a rate increase.
It's in that book right over there.
Yeah. All right, John, I think it was $2 for like the longest
Maybe.
time, and then we made that jump in 17.
Wasn't myself. That's my fault.
So for me, again, early signs are looking like no water rate increases. We're going to modify our revenue slightly and also bring back something with no sewer rate increases. But again, with a caution sign, I really think we need to revisit this again. Once the year is complete, let's see kind of where we land. And then we have to consider everything we can. If we don't do anything, we don't do anything. But I think it might be worth a look. What the expenditures are pretty flat on both sides. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the report, the detail, and the responsiveness. Seriously. These items, consider authorizing BEDC Executive Director to execute a contract and related documents for the sale of approximately 23.4 acres located on FM 93 to John Tex Properties. Cynthia.
Sorry, that was a long walk. Good afternoon. So let's see here. All right, good afternoon. So I'm excited to bring this item to you tonight. This will continue our journey of redeveloping the Rockwool property. And we've been working on this for about 10 years with the city of Belton. So just a recap on the property. If you recall, back in 2009, the city of Belton acquired these 3 tracts that are illustrated for you. The city decided to keep the southern property south of FM 93, and you conveyed 50 acres to the EDC. And so BDC acquired these 2 tracts in 2016. And it's important to note that at that time, we conducted a phase 1 environmental, which may seem a little silly, given that we have pounds and pounds and pounds of documentation on the environmental for this property. It is the Rockwool Superfund site, but it was important to do this process because it ensured that BEDC would be protected from the liability of having environmental issues with the property. So anything that's existing, BDC would not be held liable moving forward, but more importantly, it allowed any future property owners to also be eligible for that program, which is called the Bonafide Prospective Purchasers Program. And so something that we took on, and then as part of the requirements, we have done annual reports and maintenance, and we've collaborated closely with TCEQ and EPA as we have owned this property, as we've marketed and maintained this property as well. In 2019, we sold the 13-acre tract, and that leaves us today with the 36 acres north of FM 93. And so for the past couple of years, we've been working with a couple of prospective property owners to subdivide this property. And today I'm excited to bring a contract to you for your consideration. Quick reminder of what this property looks like when you're looking at it through the lens of the environmental sensitive areas. And so the yellow illustrates the wells that are currently being monitored by TCEQ. Marks represent the sensitive soil areas, and the orange illustrates where Atmos has a gas pipeline going through the property. And just north of that is the former railroad. And so lots of interesting aspects to this property. But remember, the goal when the city conveyed it to the city, to the EDC, was to make these parcels productive again and have them developed. So today, the contract that we have in front of you will actually accomplish 3 things when we sell the property. It will facilitate the expansion of ECS. And so well, I'll show you that in just a second. It'll facilitate the expansion of ECS. It'll facilitate the development of the Rockwool site. And those 2 items are a component of the $2 million EDA grant that the city received. And so it will provide for a successful grant also. So here's the property I've talked about. We're looking to subdivide this. We have 2 prospective purchasers. The contract today is for the property in orange. And so just north of that, the rectangular building, that's ECS. And so buying this property allows them to fully maximize their existing property by moving storage and parking onto the Rockwell site. However, the challenge is that the railroad divides the two parcels. And so the city of Belton has spent a lot of time working with the city of Temple to ensure that access could be obtained over the railroad. And the city was successful in doing that. And ECS now has an access easement for the city of Temple. Part of that required realigning the Rails to Trails project. And so I will show you that on this plat, this final plat, which is kind of hard to see. But if you see at the very bottom edge of the property along the road, there are small tracks that border this property. And so in lieu of a hike and bike trail that divides the two parcels, the hike and bike trail will be moved to the edge of the property, and that will in the future be conveyed to the city of Belton. I guess the other aspects here is that ECS is currently using that property. They have a lease agreement with the BEDC that allowed them to go ahead and move the parking and the storage while we work through some of these challenges of easements. And so in the future, they might build an additional building on this property for ECS, or they might build additional buildings to lease or for other industrial users. So again, it's the redevelopment of this property. The adjacent property, we continue to talk to that prospective purchaser, and I expect we might have something for you in the next month or so. So now to talk about the contract that you have in your packet. So BEDC we're recommending the sale of property for $193,650. At closing, the $1,000 that has been paid for the land lease will be deducted from that price. There is $15,000 earnest money. There are environmental provisions that are part of this contract, and they are asking for a 180-day feasibility period. This will allow them, if they choose, to do the annual phase 1 that we conducted to help protect them from the liability of the property. And then we will close by December 17th. So this was approved unanimously by the Board of Directors on June 3rd, and asking for your consideration and authorizing the contract. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Cynthia. Questions or comments?
Great job. I didn't think you'd ever sell that.
Oh, wow, thanks.
Keyword EPA Superfund.
Yeah.
Well,
And if anybody's been here very long and they remember the Rockwell facility,
Yes.
and it, like it's snowing outside and the insulation blowing down the road. They've done a tremendous job to clean that up. Cynthia, thanks for all your work. Easement, water, rails to trails, hike and bike path. There was a lot in this project, and so glad it's closing and will be off EDC's books and over in the private sector.
Thank you. Well, city staff has spent a lot of time helping us with all of these, and we have now beautiful relationships with every government entity in the state of Texas, I believe.
Which is beneficial.
Yeah, and the feds. Yes, federal goes well.
We do need to authorize this transaction, so I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Exciting. Thanks, Cynthia.
Item number 8, consider a award of a bid authorizing city manager to execute the construction contract with Texas Materials Inc. for the annual street maintenance project. Any other change orders associated with the contract not to exceed the amount authorized under state law. Your Public Works, Scott.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to present to you the 2025 street maintenance plan. We'll look at it here. We have a total of 44 streets, including base and adults around the city. Green highlighting the base and the red is highlighting the adults. Kind of separated the maps here a little bit to show that we have 36 streets within the base bid. Kind of giving you a view of where these streets are located, and I'll give a little more explanation in a second. The adult streets that we have are kind of spread out throughout the city. You can see they're at some far distances. Some of the ones that you off to the west, we're going to kind of implement a chip seal for these streets. They're very adaptable to that. It just serves a great purpose out there with the chip seal effect. It's not affecting being children in the city. It's more just a driving aspect. So I think it'll be a good implementation to see how this works out in those few areas. This is kind of a view from the past 2019 to 2025, just to show the streets that we've done. If you have seen on my first ones for the base bid, we kind of were in area more north and east portions of town. The last few years, we've been looking more towards the south. So to kind of give you a viewpoint of why we're in that area, the last few years, we've kind of been directing more towards the south and central. So we've spread out more to the north at this point. A few of the streets I want to show you is Head Street, downtown close to the police department. Another one is East 26th Avenue, a little between River Oaks and North Bill Street. Alligator cracking and such, that's to a point that it's time for a mill and overlay. East 20th and a half, we had done some water line work in there, updated the water lines. At this point, the street was in need of mill and overlay, so that's came in as a good. We've also have East 20th and a half that we've had crews internally reworking the base material and stuff, getting it prepared for just for lay. And crews did a fantastic job. It's kind of a before and an after, and they're ready to go. This also has a brand new water line in that area, even though we're talking about streets. They've done a fantastic job in that area.
Hardly Band-Aids and touch-ups, I might add.
No, it's not Band-Aids and touch-ups. It is a fine job. Atrium Circle there that had River Place is just an area between Pecos and Sundown Trail Court, I'm sorry, that needed some attention. Wanted to just let you know, we have 122 miles of streets throughout the city. We generally pave around 4 to 5 miles of street annually, which equates to an average of around 4% of the streets. If we could do that on an annual basis, as y'all allowed us to, which is fantastic, basically you're looking at a 20-year period to be able to get all our streets. And if we can keep them maintained the way they are between a 15, 25-year period, we're looking pretty good in that fashion. Streets added each year with development. In 2023, we had 1.5, 24, 3.5, and we're estimating around 2 miles here for this current year. We had 3 great competitive bids. Texas Material Group was the one that we went with. Their prices were virtually the same as last year, very competitive. This project is developed to be completed before October 1st. And I know they'll have that knocked out before then. We're hoping before school starts. So our recommendation at this time is to award the bid for this contract. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Discussion, questions?
I know last year we were able to add in walking trails. Is that something we look at on a regular basis, or like what's the?
We do look at it. It just depends on the funding and
Gotcha.
what we have, what's more comparative at that time.
Yeah, Parks has trail maintenance dollars. This year they spent them on some areas down by the basketball courts at Yeti Poke. They're doing a section in Dawson of that trail and some areas around Heritage Park as well. They're going to finish out this year. So it just depends. If we have the monies like we did for Chisholm Trail, we did that. But it just depends on where the need's at.
Maintenance.
Yeah, this has been the
Maintaining what you
best.
have, I think is just awesome. And I think this started off maybe at $600,000 or $700,000 years ago. And boy, it's been a commitment on the behalf of the council to increase that. I think last year we talked about increasing it by 5%. And it's really interesting to see the total mileage or miles of streets, what we're projecting to do, and to have a long-term plan to make sure that every street is on a 15 to 20-year schedule. And so, boy, I think we're on the right path. And if you've read many, well, never mind. I think we're doing well. Very pleased.
If you read Strongtown.
I make a motion to.
Yeah, Strongtown.
I make a motion to approve agenda item number 9.
Second.
Oh,
Number 8.
8. Sorry, I moved on to the next one already.
I'm stuck
8.
thinking about the street.
My motion to number 8.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0. Number 9, receive a presentation and consider resolution finding no objection to a petition from the Nolanville Fire Department for the creation of a Bell County Emergency Services District number 3, which would include an area in Belton, ETJ. G. Fontenot.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You are going to learn everything you need to know about an ESD. One thing I found when I moved over here was ESDs weren't very popular in Bell County when I first got here, and they're slowly starting to come up. So we're going to take this as an educational opportunity and get you guys. So when this comes up again, because I know it will, you already have that knowledge. So what is an ESD? It's a political subdivision of the state. It's a taxable entity. It's created to provide fire protection. This particular ESD is fire protection, not EMS. You can actually have 2 ESDs in one area, one for fire and one for EMS. Right now, we're only considering a fire protection ESD. Again, it's funded through property taxes with approval, operates independently from any cities, and it's overseen by a board of commissioners. Those board of commissioners are set by the county. They set 5 commissioners. They set the ad valorem tax. They adopt annual ESD budgets, may issue bonds and other debts, develops fire service delivery plan. So as a city council, imagine you only had one department to deal with. That's kind of what an ESD does. There's a 5-person commission, and their whole sole purpose is to deal with the fire department. So they don't have to worry about streets or water or anything. They only deal with fire department. So in an ESD, who actually provides the fire service, it changes throughout the life cycle of an ESD. Initially, it's a volunteer department or departments. In this case, it's departments. As that matures, they will grow into more of a career. So you can have volunteer departments or different providers. Normally, like an established fire department nearby can contract with the ESD to provide services. And then, of course, an ESD can develop their own fire department. So that life cycle we were talking about, year 1 through 4 is that kind of that foundation building cycle. It really establishes those funds. The board focuses on service contracts and initial governance. The second stage, that 5 to 9 stage, really that's that growth stage where they start hiring some people. They begin owning some assets like fire trucks and fire stations. The operational stage is more of a maturity level at 9 to 14 years. They have a full-time staff, combination staff. They have fire stations. Their focus is just making it the best fire service they can provide to that area. And then after 15 years, they start going into those specialties, confined space and hazmat. They're at that maturity level that they can do that. So why we're here today, there's been a petition from the Nolanville area to create an ESD that incorporates the Nolanville Fire Department's district, Central Bell Fire District. Now, Central Bell is 3 Creeks, basically. And then Sparta Volunteers, which is Sparta Road on the other side of 439. 439? Yeah, 439. So this is kind of the map. Now, the colored area, the green, yellow, and the red, that would be one ESD. One ESD covered by 3 different departments. So that board would meet and kind of issue guidance to all 3 of those departments and funding to all 3 of those departments. The blue area that you see is an existing ESD. That's Salato's ESD. That's ESD number 1. That was the first ESD in the county. If you look at Sparta and at Central Bell, a lot of their area is in our ETJ, and that's why we're here today, is because the ETJ, the ESD incorporated ETJ, under law, you guys have to give consent. So interesting meeting we had with city staff, Nolanville, and an ESD lawyer. And a lot of this stuff we learned during that meeting. So what happens if Belton consents? The county commissioners can set a public hearing. There will be a local election in November. If it passes by vote, the ESD is established, and then their board will be appointed and begin setting ad valorem taxes and service delivery plans. Depends if Belton City Council does not give its consent, and this is where we learned a lot. If the proposed ESD can't move forward in its current form, Nolanville and the petitioners can withdraw the boundaries to exclude the ETJ, but in turn, they can petition the city to provide fire service into the ETJ within 6 months. If the city denies that, and we don't want to run into the ETJ in 6 months, then it automatically gets back onto the ballot without consent of council. And that's kind of an eye opener there. We're getting close to the end. I know you're hungry, John, so I'm trying to hurry.
Please.
So what does this do for the city or to the city's future? Because it's in our ETJ, we have to be concerned about annexation. And really what we're talking about here is annexation of Three Creeks would be the biggest concern here. If and when the city decides to move forward with an annexation, if the ESD has bonded debt and we take, let's say, 25% of their income by annexation, we have to pay 25% debt, that whatever debt they have. And if they own a fire truck or a fire station that they have to abandon because they don't provide service to that area anymore, now the city has to buy that fire station or that fire truck, any kind of assets. And that's if the city wishes to provide services there. If the city annexes and don't wish to provide services there, the ESD will still exist and still provide the service, but those people that live in that area will be paying city taxes and an ESD. So in conclusion, the ESD should increase the services for fire protection into that ESD area. The creation of the ESD is a positive thing for those people in that communities that may be underserved at this time. It'll bring a stable funding source to those three different departments. It can go up to an ad valorem tax of 10 cents per $100 value. $300,000 home, that's about $300 a year that they could increase. Place an additional financial burden on the city when annexations do happen. We just talked about that. And there's an avenue for the ETJ to be included in an ESD, even if the council doesn't give consent. There's always, they can wait out that 6 and then get put right back on it. And it may cause the city to adjust. Just recently, the council approved that if future subdivisions or building developments want to tap onto the water, they would have to be annexed to do that. That trigger may change now, where instead of waiting for the development to come up and be tax appraised, where we would have to pay that money back to the ESD, we trigger that annex a little later, so there's nothing really taxable value there. In conclusion, staff recommends consent of the proposed ESD, which would allow the petitioners to move forward with the election. Any questions?
Thank you.
For the record, for any future ESD voters listening, 10-cent valuation on 300,000 is only $300, not 3,000.
Did I say
So
3,000?
you said-
I'm sorry, I meant 300.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
What mutual aid wise, what happens when I noticed the phases 1 through 4 years still kind of volunteer? Like, for example, 2 houses on fire in Three Creeks. I know we ran mutual aid. And how does that all work out post ESD creation?
It really won't for the first probably 4 or 5 years
Okay.
because the ESD is going to help fund those volunteer departments to help them increase their capabilities. After that first 4 to 5 years, they'll start adding on time staff, which will reduce the likelihood of a mutual aid call. Salado is like a tech example of what's going on and what normally goes on with an ESD. For about 5 years, they now have their first full-time staff being hired. They spent a lot of money on infrastructure, fire trucks and fire stations. They're just getting into that next level, and that's what we can expect to see with this ESD.
So do we have any desire to provide services to the part of our ETJ that's in them?
You know, it is a possibility. That would be a contractual provision we would have with the ESD once it's established. That if there was an area that's underserved by a department now, that the ESD feel that it's in their best interest to contract with us, we would sit down with them, negotiate. But it is a negotiable item. Yeah.
So annexation is voluntary at this point. So, what does that really look like then if we have, if someone wants to voluntarily annex, which that actually has happened, are they still part of that ESD or do they just then become they're part of our city? So they're on our.
We would send them to the ESD stating that this property has been annexed and we will provide service.
Okay.
They'll take it off of their tax roll.
Okay. That's what I was curious.
But we have to buy their pro rata share of debt based on that.
Yeah. And if we're talking about a small parcel, a house or maybe a couple of houses on a street or something, we're not talking about a whole lot because they're not a big percentage of what
Right.
they're getting. It's really when you're talking about annexing all of Three Creeks, where that's the majority of their money, and a large percentage, we're going to be paying off a large percentage of their debt.
Again, still has to be voluntarily annexed.
Yeah.
Well, and the Three Creeks
What?
stuff has been in the works for
I know.
15 years or something, whenever the mud started
Yeah.
I mean, the plan is for them to
Yeah, I know.
come in at some point.
And it's only if the city wishes to provide services to Three Creeks too. Three Creeks can get annexed and we do not provide service. The ESD remains their service provider. And then we wouldn't owe them anything.
Are there issues or concerns by the citizens? Is that where this started, that they are lacking services in these areas?
Yes, yeah. Chief Cunningham is here, who kind of is spearheading this whole, so he could probably answer that a little bit, kind of the background of how the ESD. Come right up there. Name and address.
Good evening, Robert Cunningham, 4007 Lazy Brook in Nolanville. And yes, a lot of concern has come, especially from the Three Creeks area. The lack of services that are being provided there is part of the main push, I would say, especially in that side of the area that we're looking to annex. It has been Three Creeks.
If the ESD is established and then the city annexes, just say Three Creeks. The way the proration of debt or whatever that we take on, that's based on the taxable value that's being paid under the ESD. It's not based on acreage.
Right, it's paid on the taxable value and percentage. So if Three Creeks brings in, let's say 50% of their total taxable value, then we would pay off 50% of their bonded debt. It's not all debt. It has to be government insured debt.
Thank you. I guess I'm just maybe a little surprised. I think what I hear out in the Three Creeks area, we're already charging them more for their water, all those services. And to have an possible additional tax in addition to the mud and other taxes that they're under, seems like a pretty heavily taxed area.
I believe their concept is that they would rather pay the ESD funding than the insurance rate that they're currently having, where an ESD can actually help lower those insurance rates because of the ISO rating. They're about breaking even, if not saving a little bit of money by paying the ESD tax versus having their insurance rate double.
Who's providing services to them now? Who are they contracted with?
Central Bell Volunteer Fire Department.
What's their current ISO and what's our ISO?
10.
Theirs is a 10 and we're a 4. Right?
We're 3.
Oh, good.
I thought it was down to a 6 now, the latest fire marshal, state fire marshal.
And Three Creeks? Yeah, I'm not real sure. Last I heard 10.
It was 10, back down to 6 now.
Okay.
And the citizens would be voting on whether or not to establish.
Yeah.
We're not establishing an ESD.
You're just giving consent.
Yeah.
We're, with the approval of this, we allow them to move forward with the vote versus the petition and then a vote.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve item 9 as it's been presented to us.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor of item number 9, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Carries unanimously. And
Thank you.
if
Thank
any
you
other,
very much.
no other further discussion, needs, concerns, meeting is adjourned.
Well done, John.